Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Maxwell Ivey. Maxwell Ivey is a totally blind man who transformed himself from a morbidly obese, failed carnival owner to a respected amusement equipment broker in the best health of his life. Along the way, he learned so many new skills and so much about himself. In addition to brokering amusement equipment, he is now an award-winning self-help author, entertaining motivational speaker, and prolific podcast guest appearing on over 200 shows. He helps others share their stories and grow their passions by connecting them with podcast and radio show host. He loves to sing and mix music with his public talks, and he hosts the What's Your Excuse show, featuring guests who have overcome adversity or thrived in spite of difficult life circumstances. Max's goal is for his audience to ask themselves, what's my excuse? Welcome to the podcast, Max.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate you having me and looking forward to having a good time with you.
Yes. And let's just start out by you telling your story, where you grew up and how you got to where you are today.
Right. Well, I grew up in near Houston, Texas, in a family of carnival owners. I also knew from a relatively early age that I was going to eventually lose most, if not all, my vision to retinitis pigmentosa or RP. Thankfully, growing up in a family that operates carnivals, just like a lot of families that have had small businesses over the years, you're taught from an early age that self-pity and feeling sorry for yourself is not going to be tolerated, that you learn how to find solutions because that's what you have to do, and it extends throughout the whole family. I went to traditional high school and college. I achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. I'm one of the few blind Eagles.
Congratulations on that. That's huge.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I sometimes forget how big that was and is. And it's one of those things I'm very happy when podcasters stop me and go, that was important, because it is, but sometimes we forget about the things in the far past and how much it took to accomplish them, how many people were involved in your success, and how much of a great memory it is for hard times in the future. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to work in the family business and help with the carnival until my dad's death in 2003. By 2006, it was pretty apparent that we were not going to be carnival owners again. We had combined our rides with my uncle's carnival, and there really wasn't a place for me on his midway. My games that I owned weren't capable of competing with games that were meant for a bigger show than we had. And so I knew I needed to do something else. And I started helping people sell their own surplus rides because, they tell authors, if you're going to write about things well, I think if you're going to start a business, it's really helpful if it's something or have at least done a little bit of in the past. So I started the Midway Marketplace in 2007, where I do help other amusement equipment owners sell their surplus rides and games, and I also do appraisals, and I still enjoy helping people there. I had to learn so many things, including I had to learn how to hand code HTML, which is another one of those things that I sometimes forget how difficult that was and how difficult it is for people who have had to do a little bit of it. So had to start recruiting clients, setting fees, writing copy, managing media, recording videos, started a blog. Social media came along, so I had to figure that out, building an email list. So just continually trying to grow this business of selling rides and learning new things pretty much every day or week sometimes. And people said, Max, you're inspiring us by your willingness to take on these difficult challenges. We want you to share more of your experiences as a blind entrepreneur. And that led to theblindblogger.net. People had been calling me the blind blogger online for a while because when you're a blind person in any group, you're usually the only blind person, and you become the blind whatever. So in a community of bloggers, I was the blind blogger.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I've written 4 books, including my latest, which just went live this week, like in the last 24 hours.
Oh, congratulations on that too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've traveled the country solo. I've been on many podcasts. I've helped other people get on podcasts. I do like to sing and do that on my show and also at public talks. I've shared my story at national conferences and local advocacy groups. And like you mentioned, I have a little show called What's Your Excuse?, which really goes back to what people said about me for several years before I finally decided that I was going to start this second, I guess maybe third journey with the blind blogger. Was they would say, Max, if you can start a blog, or if you can have a podcast, or if you can create a website, then what's my excuse? And so while I tried to evade the name What's Your Excuse for my podcast, I just really couldn't come up with anything better.
Uh-huh.
And now at this point, I'm continuing to do the work, grow the business, try to help others, and just waiting to see what the next experience or adventure is going to be. And I know people are thinking, Max, Corona is here and we're all locked in our houses. But, experiences, adventures, and lessons are all around us if we just keep our hearts and minds open to finding them. So it could be, this interview could be my next adventure. As far as I know, sometimes my conversations with people have been more thrilling than some of my travels. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm hoping my latest book, The Blind Blogger's First Speaking and Signing Adventures, which is about my first efforts to go out and promote my work as a writer, I'm hoping it's going to encourage people to face their fears and overcome those obstacles that they've put in front of themselves, and have those adventures, whether they're in their backyard, online, or halfway around the world.
Yes, and actually writing and authoring a book, I've done it, and I've only done one, and it was definitely an adventure, a very expensive adventure as I was learning. Oh
Yes.
my goodness. So even that's a huge obstacle to overcome. Just to get a book to market is can be daunting. So
right, and it is expensive, and it's if you're self-published, then you have to do the writing, the editing, the formatting, the promoting, or you have to hire people to do all those different stages. And like with my books, I've managed to get the 4 books published, but only one is available in audio because that's an expense I can't justify yet. And sadly, none of them are available in large type or Braille yet. Something that I have on my list of things that I want to see happen with my. However, I think that it's more likely that I'm going to have to wait on one of the libraries for the blind to do it as opposed to getting it done myself. That is, unless I happen to come to the attention of a publisher that decides, Max, we finally discovered you. We're going to re-release all your books, and then then maybe that would be a different thing. But I'd love to see my books in large type and Braille, and I'd love to see the other 3 out in audio. But it is expensive, and also it's a matter of trust, because you have to find the right people, and just deciding whether somebody is trustworthy to read your book or to publish it in a different language. Those are big decisions for something that you've invested the kind of time in that you have in a book.
yeah, for sure. But it sounds like you haven't used any excuses at all. You keep moving forward, creating new things. What are you most excited about right now besides the new book out?
I think the new book is the new thing. I'm really excited about that. I'm also really excited about a new program that I started because, me and you were talking before this about people hosting shows, but also going on other people's shows to share their stories. And I realized that there are a lot of people who are thinking, hey, everybody else is on Zoom talking to podcast hosts. I need to be on. But that doesn't mean that they know what to do next. So I've created an interactive course that I call 8 Weeks to Be the Next Podcast Guest Rock Star, which probably needs a shorter name. But the point is I want to help people by sharing my years of experience as a guest and helping other people to get them to a point where they can, really share their story effectively and powerfully and use it to grow their passion. And in fact, right now, I'm looking for a couple of beta clients to add to my, to my proof, my social proof about how well it's worked. And if one of your listeners wants to reach out to me at theblindblogger.net, I'm willing to work with them on the 8-week project to teach them how to be a great guest. I'm willing to do that totally for free for one of your listeners. But mainly because I know what I'm doing works, but it would be great if I had, more testimonials and other people out there telling people how great it is. So those are couple of things. I'm always looking forward to my next chance to share either a podcast or speaking, even though most all the public speaking is being done virtually now. And really just waiting to see who I'm going to meet next. One of the things I hope when I do a podcast is that some of the hosts' audience are going to reach out to me and say hello, and we'll have a conversation, and I'll have a new friend and maybe a new opportunity or a new challenge.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And talking about challenges, as most people know, I'm a behavioral optometrist. So I see people coming in, and whenever something's going wrong with their vision, of course, they're very afraid and worried about their vision. I mean, this morning I had someone come in and he had hemorrhages in his eyes. And he said, I can't see. There's this brown reddish color. I'm like, yeah, you have blood in your eye. So I sent them to the specialist. Or, a guy this afternoon came in, and 2 weeks ago he had to have his eye enucleated, which means taken out because he got hit in the eye. So people have a lot of fear around losing their vision, and you knew pretty early on that you were going to lose your vision. So talk to me about the mindset, or how did you prepare yourself emotionally, and as you were losing more vision, just how did you handle that?
Right. Well, I think one of the advantages I had, and at the time it didn't seem like it was, but is I lost my vision gradually at first. I had perfect vision until I was 4 or 5 years old, and then I started losing it gradually. I had a big drop off in vision when I went to junior high school, which is pretty common for men with retinitis pigmentosa, that they have a large vision loss when going through puberty. Mm-hmm. And then it stayed constant until I went off to college. And by the time I graduated from college, I had light perception. But in the early days, over the course of a few years, I went from somebody who, and I still love to read, but somebody who would read regular, even small print in low light, to having to have really bright light, to having to have larger type, and then eventually use a closed circuit TV to blow up the text to where I could still read it. And then eventually audio, and I started learning Braille when I was in junior high school. So some of it was a gradual, some of it was the fact that everybody in my family was in the carnival business, and we all lived on one piece of property together. So other than when I was at school, I was kind of insulated. And even at school, when you have 16 cousins and they're all in, spread out over 2 or 3 grades in the same school district, there's people around that look out for you. Hmm. My family was very encouraging. My dad was, one of those dads who, he was kind of split down the middle. He would tell me to my face that, Max, you're capable of doing a lot of things. You can do just about anything you want to if you set your mind to it and work hard enough at it. But there were times when he would see me wanting to do things that he was not, that would personally scare him. So he might do something to make it more difficult for me. Oh. My best example of this is my brother is one of those people. He has extra DNA because he can fix mechanical stuff, electronics, computers. He just seems to be able to talk to that stuff. And so he would buy stuff or get stuff for next to nothing and fix it. He had a dirt bike and a moped. Well, a moped is just a bicycle with a little motor on it. It doesn't go very fast. So my brother thought it would be safe for me to ride, and I thought it was so. But a little while after we got the moped, we started noticing that the moped kept breaking down. And a few years ago, after my dad passed away, my mom finally admitted, she said, Max, your dad was scared to death about your brother's dirt bike and your moped. So every night after y'all were asleep, he'd go in the barn and break them.
Oh, no.
Eventually he broke the moped so good that we would have had to order parts from Italy or something to get it fixed again. And that was the end of the moped. But, it's like, he wasn't going to tell me, no, you can't do that.
Mm.
And there was only so much risk he was willing to put up with. So he decided to just tinker with the bike so it wouldn't run. And that's the thing about being a parent of, somebody with vision issues or other disabilities. But he encouraged me all through the years. He didn't want me to be in the carnival business. He wanted me to find some other way to make a living because, as he used to say, the carnival business is the only industry he knows of where insanity is not a disqualifier, but in fact may be a prerequisite.
Oh, no. That is funny. And it's so common for parents or, people who love us to, they don't mean to limit us, but their fears and their protection is so strong that they want to stop us from doing things that, we can do, or they're okay.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that helped me a lot was I lived while we never really had money, we lived in a school district that had money because, as you know, the schools in the U.S. are funded by property taxes. So where you live determines a lot of what resources the school you attend is going to have available. So we went to a pretty well-off school district out in the suburbs of Houston back before it was a suburb, when it was still farmland.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had money for specialized teachers, actual, trained teachers for the special education program, and orientation and mobility instructors and Braille teachers and things like that a lot of other people didn't have access to. And the other thing is that, when you're in school, the most fun thing that can happen is for you to have a legitimate reason to be out of school, right?
Uh-huh.
So as I'm learning to, cane travel and navigate buses and visit the airport and figure out shopping, things like that, 2 or 3 days a week, I'm leaving school early. And so I'm going and doing things, they're not exactly fun things most of the time. It's, it's difficult stuff you're having to learn. And there's a little bit of stress involved trying to do it without the help of your teacher. The teachers were always there, but that wasn't the them doing it for you wasn't the point. So, but getting out of school, making it seem like my lessons in becoming able to deal with my vision loss, making that seem like it was fun was also a big part of it. So,
yeah, that's a great distinction. Because there's a lot of people that have different things that they have to overcome that, there's some things you don't have control over. We just have to adapt or do something to overcome them.
Yeah. And back to, like, I like to tell people, one of the blindness taught me adaptability and flexibility and creative problem solving. The carnival business taught me just the whole idea that there is no excuse, because when you grow up in that sort of business, nobody really cares anything about you. They could care less if your generator broke, if your truck was on the side of the road, if a piece of a ride broke and it couldn't run. All people wanted to know was, on Thursday or Friday when you're supposed to be open, can I ride the Ferris wheel and buy a funnel cake or cotton candy? So you learn from an early age that basically there's a way, and no matter how distasteful that way may be, you have to find it somehow. So, there have been times during my career in the carnival business where I did pretty much anything a person could do except drive. I have, put the cotton candy in the bags and twisted the ties. I've set up and taken down rides. I've had grease all over every part of me at one time or another. I ordered stock and did bookings. So, we just found ways. But really, it was not uncommon for me and my dad to get to the next town with the last load and somebody go, well, how did y'all get that loaded by yourselves? Or how did y'all get that off the last lot? It was a swamp. And my dad would always look at them, and I'm assuming, but I'm pretty sure he would look at them and he would smile and he would go, what, did we have a choice?
You do what you got to do.
You do what you have to do. And it taught me that lesson. What, do we have a choice? And of course, nowadays with my podcast and my blog, and what do I have an excuse? And, sometimes I decide not to do something, but very rarely can I come up with a legitimate excuse, So although recently I did catch myself making excuses for myself, and I finally got past that. If you want me to tell that story later, I can, because I think it's an important reminder that no matter how well you're doing, there can be places in your life that you have a blind spot to, or that you choose to be satisfied with where you're at there, even though, deep down in your heart, you probably know that you should be doing something about it. So,
yeah. So I wanted to switch gears here a little. So the singing, you combine singing and other things. So when did the singing start?
this is one of my favorite things to talk about, because it's one of the few ways where every time I do it, I am refacing my fear about singing. Because when I was in junior high school, I'm losing my vision and my voice is changing, and people started making fun of my singing. And at one point, the choir I was in at school, several of the people in the choir even told me, Max, we want to win this competition this weekend, so don't sing, just lip sync the words. Yes. So yes, I'm glad you can laugh about it. Well, I can kind of laugh about it now myself, but it was kind of hard back then, because that was one of the few things I really enjoyed and was actually getting to do something about. So about 6 or 7 years ago, we're preparing to record the first video for my Midway Marketplace website, because I had learned that videos help sell stuff. And, the more people can see of you or the stuff that you want them to buy, the better off you are. So I'm recording this video. I had given myself a deadline of New Year's Day to complete it. And it was like December 28th. And I had finally figured out how to, to set my laptop so the camera would be pointed at me, and I was ready to record. And I didn't have an intro or an outro, and I didn't have the money to hire somebody to do it. And I thought, Max, if you wait until you can do what everybody else does, you're not going to do it. You're going to miss your goal. So what can I do that will satisfy the purpose of introing to my podcast? So I decided, okay, I used to love singing. I'm just going to do a little bit. And I did a little bit of Nat King Cole's A Christmas Carol, and led that into a video. Yeah. And, what is it? Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a choir. So I did a little bit of that. And then I went into my video, and the response was, Max, we like the singing. We want you to do more of that. And so I just kept doing it. And over the years, it's gotten to the point where some people, if you go by my YouTube channel statistics, it looks like people enjoy hearing me sing more than they enjoy hearing me talk. So, but that's not the end of the story. I was speaking at my first conference in Philadelphia in 2017, which is actually the beginning of the story behind this book that I just released. I was doing my first speaking event at a place called DreamCon, and when it's over with, everybody's taking selfies and you're hugging and getting pictures. And I said, would y'all mind if I stood under the banner for the event and sung a little bit? And they said, sure. So I go over there against the wall and I sing the first verse of The River, which is kind of it is my theme song, because I usually sing it more often than anything else. And it's a good song for me. It's perfectly in my range, even the concluding verse. So I sing that. I sing one verse of it. And one of the other speakers, a guy named Azuka, comes up to me and he goes, and this guy, Azuka Zook, is one of those speakers who he sounds like, when he talks, it's like you feel like you're standing underneath the waterfall and the building is about to come apart from the inside out. He just has a real presence to him when he talks.
Yeah.
And he goes, Max, from now on, anytime you talk, you have to sing. He said, that's going to become your thing. You're going to become the singing speaker. And I've done it. But up until recently, every time I did it, I had to apologize or explain it. I've had to tell people why I'm doing it. But now I've gotten to where I'm finally more comfortable with the idea. And I'm singing more of a song at the beginning or end of my talks when I get the opportunity. And as in fact, I did a virtual summit just a couple months back where the host actually let me go long because he wasn't going to let me get off the summit without singing. And I even told him, I said, well, aren't you worried about the legal liability, you know, because you got a bigger audience than I do. He said, oh, the heck with it. I want you to do it. So I did it. And it's become something. And the thing is, I thought, you know, nobody is singing with their speaking. And then a while back, somebody sent me a Twitter account for this guy. Well, he sings rock music. I generally sing country or you know, more older traditional pop music. But some guy, I think he's from Oregon or Washington State, who he does entire concerts that are him singing and then sharing stories and teaching lessons. So it's kind of come around from something I did because I didn't have anything else to do to something that people have enjoyed and encouraged. And now it's a part of my identity as the blind blogger. And I'm looking forward to a time soon when I can do a presentation of my own where I sing some songs and share my stories and teach lessons. And I think it's going to be really fun when that happens. I don't know, you know, where or when yet, but one of the great things about this virtual stuff is right now, nobody expects you to rent a venue. So it's just a matter of finding a platform and doing it online. So that could be my next adventure.
And it sounds like a really fun adventure. And I think lots of people would really enjoy that. I mean, when you're talking about that, I'm thinking about just the traditional storytelling when, you know, they didn't have TVs and things, and people would sit around and sing and tell stories. And I know now my family's very musical. So when we get together, we sing. Somebody pulls out some instrument, or we all sing, and it's just so connecting with people too. People connect when you sing or when you have some kind of music.
Right. Well, I have a friend who runs the Hustle Energy podcast who we don't have a date yet, but we have agreed that we're going to do this. And I've picked the music and the stories I'm going to tell. And right now, it's just a matter of we have to practice the platform so that when I do it, it will actually have a chance of going smoothly, as opposed to, you know, some of the examples we have of people using Zoom for the first time.
Oh yeah. Believe me, there's a learning curve. There's a learning curve for sure.
You know, it's interesting you say there's a learning curve to Zoom. You know that I did my first Zoom interview within 18 hours of knowing I was going to have to do my own interview, because I had a co-host in the early days of my podcast. A fellow named Frederick By from Canada would do the technical stuff. He would make sure we were recording. He would upload the audio. He would do the show notes, all that stuff. And I'm preparing to interview Michael Schwartz, who's a filmmaker, an award-winning photojournalist, actually, who's losing his vision. And a great story, really, really cool person. And I've got him scheduled to come on my podcast, and Fred goes, hey, Max, I can't be there tomorrow. So you're going to have to figure out some way to do this, or you're going to have to cancel, because I'm not going to tell him we're canceling. That's up to you. So I reached out to my friend Michael Babcock, who runs yourownpay.com. He's like my tech guy. If I ever get stuck for anything, online, app, hardware, whatever, I ask him, and he's like, Max, go sign up for an account with Zoom, and then send me a message saying you want to be on Zoom with me, and I'll practice with you so you know which buttons to push. And I'm seriously, from the morning of one day to that afternoon, I went from never knowing what Zoom was to having an account to doing a practice session to recording my first interview on it. And in fact, if people want to go to my website, theblindblogger.net, they can look for the interview I did with Michael Schwartz and read about how it was my first interview and how I pretty much had to just find a way, as you say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like you really did. It sounds like you did a really great job of it. So, you've written several books. Would you like to just kind of introduce to people the books you've written? And, you've talked about your website, the blindblogger.net, so they can find you there. But what I was looking at your books,
Yeah.
and they're all very different.
Well, I think that one of them is different. I think the other three are pretty similar, but the first one is called Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light, a blind man's inspirational guide to success. It talks about the time when I was going from being a carnival owner to selling equipment and to helping other people, thinking I was going to be a coach, but finding out later that people really didn't want me to be their coach, but they did want me to be their publicist. So it includes 11 exercises that I encourage them to not only work through, but to report their progress to me via the email address that's included in the book. Because I felt like when I wrote that book that I didn't want to be like every other self-help author and write a book and have somebody read the book and then really not do it, be any different or make any change. And the only thing I could think of that would make my book different was to encourage people to reach out to me and report their progress. Because as you probably know, when anybody starts to do something that their longtime friends and family don't expect them to, one of the hardest things is finding a positive, supportive voice to kind of go up against all the ones that are telling you, no, you can't, you don't, you shouldn't, it ain't going to work. So, and like I said, it has 11 exercises. It talks about the things that helped me to make my transition. Okay. The second book is called It's Not the Cookie, It's the Bag.
That's the one that attracted my attention.
Yeah, and it talks about, it talks about my progression of getting healthy first, realizing that I needed to change my lifestyle because of medical emergency, and the doctor who treated me basically, scared the death out of me. And for the first time in my life, I took it to heart. So first, I talk about being diagnosed with apnea and being treated with CPAP, which, men, if your wife, girlfriend, daughters, nieces are telling you snore, you probably do. And you probably need to be checked with a sleep study, because sleep apnea is literally a killer. People don't understand just how dangerous it can be to not get enough oxygen while you're sleeping, or to even stop breathing altogether. It can cause high blood pressure, hypertension, put you at increased risk for heart attack, stroke. In men, it can cause impotence. The worst things, though, is it can cause fuzzy thinking, poor decision making, and lack of interest. So if you're not getting good sleep, you may have the same symptoms as if you have depression. So that's another thing to think about. So after that, my doctor finally, talked me into going to the seminar about gastric surgery. So in the book, I talk about the surgery, the lessons about food that I had to learn from the doctors that I worked with, the changes I had to make in how I think about myself. One of my favorite chapters in there, of course, the chapter the book's named after, is It's Not the Cookie, It's the Bag. Because the problem is that when you buy a bag of cookies, there's 40, 50, 60 cookies in a bag.
Yes.
And nobody needs 60 cookies, and very few people are capable of eating 4 or 5 cookies and then putting the bag back and not eating more cookies until tomorrow. So my nephew actually had this idea. He brought home 1 bag of frozen cookie dough, and he baked that, and we split it 4 ways. So everybody got 4 cookies. When the 4 cookies were gone, the cookies were gone. So you didn't feel deprived. You got a little sweet in your mouth. You felt good, or maybe you felt bad, just depends. And and we started thinking, well, there are other things where, we bring too much into the house, like ice cream. Mm-hmm. I know there's more packaging involved, but if you can go from buying half gallons to buying pints or half pints, and only bringing in enough for what you're going to eat right now, it can be one of those things that helps you avoid those big setbacks, the setbacks where you eat a half gallon or a whole gallon, or where you eat an entire bag of chips, So, and like I say, it talks about the changes, the changes I had to make in the way I thought about myself. It discusses, how you start exercise, why food journals don't work, and what I like to talk about is modern meditation, which is using repetitive mindless tasks to clear your mind and use them to focus on whatever you're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. So those are a few things in that second book. The third book is The Blind Blogger's New York City Adventures, which started after I competed for and won one of the prestigious Amtrak Writers in Residence Awards. Out of thousands of people from all across the country, they picked 24 people and they gave them the opportunity to travel across the country to get away from your routine and get your writing juices started. And I was one of those. I used my prize to go off to New York City by myself during the Christmas and New Year's holidays of 2016, 2017. And I talk in there about where the money came from, how I faced the fear, not only my fear, but the fear of my family and the fear of my online community, because there were people online telling me not to go, as this was shortly after the 2016 elections, and there was a lot of unrest in the New York City area. So there were people telling me online and in person, are you sure you want to go? So facing the usual fears along with the fears of other people trying to get in my head, and then actually making the trip, navigating my way around New York City, which some of my favorite parts of that trip were finding out that I could make my way around a city like New York and do it pretty safely, in my opinion, although I'm sure that other people might have thought, well, I know a lot of people thought I was crazy. Mm-hmm. And I think the people I rented from even thought I was crazy when the 2 or 3 nights I came home really late at night, either one time from the bus, the other times from Uber. So, but I had a great time in New York. The book is a great combination of honest accounts, things I was thinking and feeling at the time. I'm told it includes some really good storytelling. It has some wonderful life lessons in there that people can use to accomplish their own goals. And you can't discount the pictures, because there's, I think, 60 photos in there that were taken pretty much by whoever happened to be at hand at the time I wanted the photo taken.
Yeah. So
the pictures were taken by waiters, taxi drivers, skate guards at Rockefeller Center took some. The Secret Service took some for me at Trump Tower. Basically, if you ask nicely with a smile and tell people why it is you're doing stuff, a lot of times they'll say yes to you. I mean, it wasn't just the blind guy in New York that they said yes to. I'm sure there were a lot of other tourists that would ask, but you got to ask with the right attitude. But that's my favorite picture in the book. Of course, I can't see any of them, but my favorite picture in the book is the one where the Secret Service guy looks like he's about to arrest me and he has somebody else taking the picture. That's my, yeah. Because when I first went to Trump Tower, they were telling me, sir, it's too busy today. You won't be able to get any pictures at all. And there's not going to be anybody here that will help you. So I'm like, okay, that's not what I wanted to hear, but it's okay. So I'm going through the metal detector because, since he had been elected, they had to beef up the security. And I get to talking to the Secret Service guy running the metal detector. The next thing I know, he's walking me around the lobby and he's helping me set up pictures. And I'm getting pictures with the SWAT guys and pictures with firefighters. And it was just a really cool experience. And the pictures, is one of those things. Before I left, I was like, this book, I really would love to have some photos. Who knows when I'll have another adventure like this. And, I just decided what would hurt to take my really simple camera with me and just ask people to take pictures and see what happens. And what happened was I came back with pictures that some people still don't believe the story that I'm telling when I tell them how I got all those pictures. But it really is an example of finding a solution, asking for help, accepting help when offered, and really just deciding that the way may not be the way I would want to do it. I mean, because if I'd had my druthers, I would have liked to have had a camera person follow me around. Mm-hmm. Maybe some video people, maybe a GoPro so that, you've always got pictures but none of those were really going to work for me with my budget and, of course, my vision. And this just happened to be a great solution. So that's the third book, the New York City trip. And then the fourth one is about my first speaking and signing trip that I took in May, June, and July of 2017, where I did my first public speaking, my first book signing, my first singing in actual public in front of people. And I also, in about 7 weeks, I went from Houston to Philadelphia to Buffalo to Jacksonville to Spartanburg to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and then back home to Houston. And most of the time, I stayed with friends who I had never met before, other than online, before I got to their homes.
Oh, that would be fun. I think I would like that. Finally
Yeah,
get, connect with people, for real in
yeah.
life.
Oh yeah, yeah. And and a lot of people are like, a lot of people still don't believe that you can actually connect with people over the internet to the point where, somebody can say, hey, I want you to come stay at my house, and you can actually expect to get there and stay at their house.
Yeah. It's really pretty amazing how open some people can be. So it's wonderful. I have friends like that too, where I either stayed with them or uh, was going to their city and met up with them. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. The other thing I like is we had our dog pass away 3 years ago, and I really enjoy being around dogs and cats. I don't like the slithery, the snakes and reptiles and stuff, but I like the furry critters. And so when you stay with other people, a lot of times you also get to hang out with their dogs and cats, which is something I enjoy.
That is fun. So, what for you gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
When I see when I see people that I've introduced to each other become friends or participate in an event or help each other accomplish something that they wanted to do, I do a lot. I send out a lot of emails for Max, and I send out a fair number of emails for other people. But the most fun ones are when you introduce two people that, as they say, I don't have a dog in the fight. I've got, there's nothing great going to happen for Max financially or professionally. It's just the joy of introducing two people who you think might like each other and might be able to help each other. And that really is the most fun thing. After that, it's helping people understand the power of their stories, because way too many people have great stories that still aren't sharing them. Even with all the people that are sharing their stories because of Corona, we still have a whole bunch of other people who are like, my story isn't good enough yet. And of course, I tell people, don't ever wait until you think your story is good enough to start sharing it with the world, because we need all of y'all we can get out here. And so helping somebody realize the power of their story and teaching them a little bit about how to share it in a way that really affects other people in a positive way. Those are some of the things that really bring me joy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I've enjoyed your stories very much. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. It's always great when the host tells you they liked you. That's and I do my best to be a good storyteller. My dad was really good, a great storyteller, so I have trouble usually accepting that that people like my stories. So thank you for that. And I've enjoyed sitting here talking with you and learning a little bit more about you and what you do or have done. And I think it was interesting talking a little bit about my vision loss with somebody who works and has worked in the profession. So thanks for
Yeah.
that.
So I have one last question before we get off, and then a request.
Okay.
So the request is, after I ask the last question, will you sing your uh, your song?
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the last question is, what is your best advice to the listeners to live the most extraordinary, incredible life?
I would say to just go ahead and do it, whatever it is, but not the whole thing. Find something small, concrete that you can do today that will get you closer to your goal, and do it. If you sit down and think about it all and you can't come up with something that you can do, well, what are some of the things you need to do that you could get help with, or that you could get somebody to do for you, or that you could pray and meditate on, that hopefully in the near future you'll be able to. So I believe people need to just go ahead and start where they are, do what they can. As they grow as a person, they will be able to do more and more. People look at me right now at the place I'm at now, many of them don't know or don't remember that 13 years ago, I was a guy who was out of a business, considered himself a failure, was obese, was borderline depressed. And the only thing I did to start with was filing for a domain name. It was 4 months later before I had a website. I filed for the domain name, believing that somehow I would learn how to get online or somebody would help me get online. And it's kind of hard to believe how far I've come from filing for a domain name before I even knew what a website was, to building my first website, to getting my first client, making my first sale, to blogging, to podcasting, to traveling the country. And it all started with doing that one small thing that I was capable of doing at that moment.
That is beautiful. So why don't you share your song with us?
All right,
before we
sure.
get off?
Yeah, okay, so this is by Garth Brooks. It's called The River. And I'm going to go with the second verse because I like the message of it better at the end of a show. Too many times we stand aside and let the waters slip away, till what we put off to tomorrow has finally come today. So don't stand upon the shoreline and say you're satisfied. Choose to chance the rapids and dare to dance the tide. And I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. Like a bird upon the wind, these waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. So I will sail my vessel until the river runs dry. Till the river runs dry.